A long, long time ago, two boys lived near the ocean in Japan. One lived high on a hillside, surrounded by lush vegetable gardens and terraces of green. The other lived in a fishing village far below, where the sea lay deep and wild and blue. Both boys learned that peace comes from facing troubling things, having a window on the sea, not from pretending those things don't exist. And that life is well worth its risks and its costs. This project celebrates so many things about this story, all those beautiful colors of the natural setting, an iconic piece of big wave artwork, and the beautiful lesson the boys learned. So let's get started. First, let's take a look at our supplies. Our paper supplies are a collection of blue colors in either construction paper or cardstock, a collection of greens, different hues, different shades, it doesn't matter. We also need to have a piece of brown cardstock, white cardstock, and a piece of black. And I'll show you what to do with each one of those as we go through this project. We'll need to have some scissors and some glue and a collection of colored pencils in the colors of blues and maybe some greens and some earthy tones. And then we're ready to get going. First, we're going to trim our brown cardstock or construction paper in half vertically. Now, I would do this with a paper cutter, but you may not have one. So I'm just going to show you how you would do it if you don't have a paper cutter. So to get a straight line, you can just fold your paper in half lengthwise and then cut along that line. This is going to be our window shutters. Next, we'll trim our white cardstock down to just a little bit smaller than a quarter of a page. So to do that, again, we'll fold it in half and then fold it in half again. And then we'll just use our scissors to cut on the inside of one square. You only need one square. And I'm going to cut about a quarter of an inch in. And that will give us just the right size for our window drawing. So we'll put those to the side for now. And then we'll trim down our blue paper. All we want to do is trim down from the short end some wavy strips. And these will become our waves of the sea. Now we're going to cut our green strips, representing the terraced rice paddies. Now the ocean waves were rolling in sort of organic shapes, right? But the terraced rice paddies are more man-made, more geometrical. So I'm going to cut these in just slanty strips that I'm going to put together, just looking sort of geometric but not perfect. I think that'll do. Now we're going to need one more page of white cardstock, and that's what we're going to base our whole project on. So let's get started building our terraces. I'll start at the top with one strip of green that happens to have a nice straight edge along the top. And I'll just put a little glue on there and lay it down. And I want it to line up with the top and the sides, but if it hangs over at any part, that's okay. Or if it doesn't quite cover up the edge, because we'll cover up the edges with black later. So I'm not too worried about that. I just want it to be pretty close. And from there on, I'm just going to continue to build the terraces. As I go, I just want to make sure to cover up all the white of the background. It doesn't matter what order my different shades of green go in. It can be any order I want. It's just kind of an organic sort of striping that I'm doing. As I'm going along, I'm thinking about all the wonderful colors of green there are in nature. You know, green plants have the ability to make their own food. And they make it, if you can believe this, out of air and sunshine and water and soil. Just pretty amazing. And they do this making of their own food through a process called photosynthesis. And that uses a green pigment, a green colored molecule in them called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll helps turn sunshine into food for the plant. It's interesting because chlorophyll gives plants their green color because it does not absorb the green wavelengths of white light. That particular wavelength is reflected back from the plant, so it looks green. And all of that science is just wonderful, isn't it, to think about? Whether you understand it all or not, it's pretty amazing that there's so many different colors of green in nature. So I find myself thinking about that and wondering about green and about all the different colors of green there are, and I wonder which color of green that I'm using today comes closest to the shade of rice terraces in Japan. I'm wondering about that as I go. I'm just enjoying putting down these beautiful greens. I think that's far enough. I like that. I think that's really pretty. So I'll stop there with the green terraces, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the blue waves. Once again, layering down from the top and building all the way to the bottom in all the different shades of blue that there are in the ocean. Thinking too about light and how it hits the ocean and makes it look blue, reflecting the sky. Think of all the different moods of the sea. Sometimes it looks gray, sometimes it looks green. Sometimes it's very, very bright, and sometimes it's very, very pale. We all have different moods, don't we? And so does the ocean. I'll save one that has a nice straight edge to put at the bottom. A couple of them, depending on what color I want to use. I think that's beautiful, and I'll turn it over and check and see if there's anything I need to cut off here that really kind of sticks out over the edge, and just trim those off. I think that's beautiful. Now, because some of these edges aren't very even, and because I want a nice frame for this, I'm going to cut some strips from my black cardstock and just put them around the edges. I'm not going to use a paper cutter for this because you might not have one, but I'm going to eyeball it and just cut as straight a line as I can. But if you have a paper cutter, use it. That's not bad. That will go on this side. Isn't that prettier with the black frame around it? And now we're ready to do our sketching. Before we get started on our drawing, let's just talk for a second about this beautiful painting. It's famous. It's by an artist named Hokusai, who is a Japanese man. He painted it around 1830, and it's a woodblock print. It's part of a series called 36 Views of Mount Fuji. He had painted a whole series of paintings of Mount Fuji right here, which is a symbol of Japanese strength and stability, and he had painted pictures that showed this mountain from the forest and from the field and from the town in different perspectives, and this one from the sea became his most famous painting of all. He created it at a time when Japan had been closed off from all foreign outside influence, but that was beginning to change, and there was a great threat of outsiders coming and changing their culture and changing their world. And so that's sort of represented here by this crashing wave that's coming down on these fast boats that would carry the fresh fish to market. and they are clearly in danger of being just swamped by this gigantic wave, which is dwarfing, making very small this little image of Mount Fuji in the background. And in fact, the foam from the waves is falling like snow onto Mount Fuji. Now, a wood block is formed by carving shapes into a plank of wood and sort of making a stamp out of it. So all the places in this painting that are white would have been hollowed out of the wood painstakingly, and there'd be a different block for every color that's in this print. And as you can see, there are a few colors. There's this very dark blue, that's a Prussian blue. This is an indigo, or maybe it's the other way around. One of these colors is Prussian, which is a synthetic color that was used to color the coats of the Prussian army, and that's how it got its name. And the indigo comes from a plant. So we have the two colors of blue, and then there's a wash of one of those blues in a more diluted state for this light blue here, and then we have these colors of brown and a very dark, again a dark blue, probably either the indigo or the Prussian, to outline the whole painting. And there's this other browner kind of color in the background. And each one of these colors would have had a separate block carved. We're going to do our best copying this painting, the style of it, not every single line, but the style of it, using colored pencils. And of course, if you want to paint it, that's perfectly fine as well. And if you are wondering kind of where to begin with this painting, let's just start by noticing. Notice, of course, that dark lines outline all the different shapes on this page. Mount Fuji and the boats are all outlined in a fine but strong dark line. And that's part of the style here. And then you might also notice that the shapes of the waves here, the foam, kind of looks like little hands that are maybe even claws reaching out. And that adds to this ominous sense, doesn't it, of this wave that's coming in. You might want to include the fishing boats, you might not. And again, we're looking at copying his style, not every single line. And if you copy this general shape and give some curlicues, notice how these two blues are alternating sort of in stripes. And if you do some of those basic ideas in your own drawing, then yours is going to be recognized as a reflection of this very famous painting, originally called Beneath the Wave, but it's now known as The Great Wave off Kanagawa by Hakusai. So let's get going on our drawing. We'll start out with just a brief sketch and then fill in the colors. Let's go. I think that'll do. So I am going to put my window here where I can keep an eye on the sea. Just put lots of nice glue on the back of it. And I'll put my picture right inside. There is my window on the sea. Instead of keeping my window shut and being afraid of what's out there and what's coming, I will leave my window open.